All right, guys, we are here for day one of the new training block, and we're currently 8 weeks post-contest prep and officially in the off season after some time off. Now, to be honest with you, these past 2 months were a bit rough. There was lots of fatigue to drop off. My training was very sporadic. Sometimes that meant I only trained 2, maybe 3 times per week at most. And my diet at this point has been pretty much intuitive. However, now I'm feeling fresh and recovered, and I'm ready to tackle some hard training again. So I'll be taking you along the ride for this off season. You'll be with me in the trenches, every workout, seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll be sharing my thought process, my methods, and my overall approach to training throughout this entire block in each one of these videos. So if you're along for the ride, let's jump in. Now, coming off of a long phase of lower volume, high intensity training, I've been really spending the last year or so focused on the basic mass gain principles that you guys know me for. Basic compound lifts, long-term heavy progressive overload. Now this phase, however, I'm utilizing what I like to call a multi-hypertrophy factor style of training. Now in simple terms, that just basically means there's multiple factors that contribute to muscle growth. You have myofibrillar hypertrophy, which is the growth of the actual muscle fibers triggered by heavy weight and high tension. And this is generally responsible for the majority of muscle growth. And then you have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. This is more of a cell swelling effect that you get from higher rep pump work. And while solid training generally covers both of these, you can absolutely alter your training to incorporate more or less of both. And that's what this block of training is really focused on, hammering muscle growth from every single possible pathway, leaving no stone unturned. For me, this is year 21 of training. And while I'm all for keeping things as simple as possible, I'm also always down to experiment and seek ways to eke out maybe that 1 extra percent. So this split, I'm going to be running a basic push-pull leg setup, which is personally spot on for my specific needs, which are a bigger chest, bigger back, bigger legs. Less importance of the arms, delts, and traps, which are strong points in my physique. Now within this push-pull leg split, there'll be 2 variations of each workout. One variation of push, which is today's workout, I'll be focusing on what I like to refer to as progression work for the shoulders and the triceps specifically. This is going to be your lower volume, high intensity, heavy weight training, focusing on hitting PRs, really attacking that myofibrillar hypertrophy. And the chest work that we'll be doing will be a bit higher volume, higher rep work, more traditional bodybuilding style pump training, but still focusing on progression, but more importantly, we're going to be focusing on using a load and using exercise selection that really hammers the muscle group and gets the most out of each and every rep and set we're doing. So this workout, we're starting off with incline barbell press for 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps. And because it's a more volume focused exercise that we're doing here, we're going to be leaving about 1 to 2 reps in the tank. I hit 225 for a set of 12 on the first set. Most likely I could have gotten about 15 reps to failure. So I would call this set approximately an RPE 7 or 3 reps left in the tank. Going into the next set, chest was already super pumped. And the goal here is to rack up as much effective volume as possible. So ideally, another 12 reps was the goal, keeping it at least 1 to 2 reps from failure. And if I gauge the level of effort from the first set properly, that should be no problem for me. And on set 2 of 225, I ended up getting another 12 here with slightly closer proximity to failure. Personally, I rate that at about 2 RAR or an RPE 8. Now from the video, it sometimes might look like I'm even further away from failure, but my pressing strength tends to drop off very quickly, especially at the higher rep ranges. And while it might look like I have 3 or 4 more reps, if I actually go for another rep at that point, it can very well be the last clean rep for me. I've been doing this so long and I'm just so in tune with my own proximity to failure that it's extremely easy for me to just call a set when it's time without getting emotional and doing it in the middle of the set. Generally, after the first 2 sets of higher rep ranges near failure, I can expect a pretty significant drop off in my strength by set 3 and beyond, which is why for all my progression work, the volume is generally capped at 2 sets or maybe even 1 set per exercise. For those progression-based sets, there's no need to really push further or increase the volume as you're just digging a bigger hole into your recovery. But again, this is the volume work. So week to week, we might not be pushing for progression, but the goal is we're going to rack up as much clean, effective volume across the block as possible. And now it's time to move on to more volume work for the pecs with the flat dumbbell press to work the meat and potatoes of those pecs. For me personally, my pressing strength fatigues very quickly with even moderate volumes. And after just 3 sets, these dumbbell presses were already much more difficult than they would have been fresh. The goal here was 3 sets of 8 to 10. Again, not prioritizing failure training, but aiming to rack up as much effective volume as possible. 3 sets here with the 120s. First set, I really didn't know where my strength was going to be, as this was a new exercise order and my strength level tends to drop off very quickly with the higher volume work for pressing. For reference, when I'm fresh, I can take the 120s for a set of 15 reps on the incline press. So flat press, ideally I should be even stronger on them. But by set 1, I only managed 9 reps while keeping at least 1 in the tank. But this was actually by design of it. I don't want to have to lift super heavy on my hypertrophy work. Otherwise, you're essentially turning both training days into your progression work. And that's where when you're getting super strong, you could actually run into more recovery issues and more wear and tear than necessary. So my hypertrophy work, I'll intentionally place exercises in a sequence and to use rep ranges that naturally build a bit of fatigue so I don't have to go super heavy on each movement. Now on the progression days, I'll do the exact opposite. By the time I got up to set number 2 here, these dumbbells were feeling much heavier than they did at the start of the session. Each and every rep, I'm focusing on keeping tension on the pecs here. Going for more of a piston style rep here than pausing and repping. Trying to make the exercise and the execution take the target muscle near failure rather than using the absolute load to approach failure. Set 2 was another 9 reps at a similar proximity to failure, and by now my pecs are smashed with just 5 sets into the session. And this is why I promote lower volume training in general. If you're going to do 12 plus sets for one body part in a single session, you probably aren't executing them correctly. So just one more set here, finishing off the bulk of my volume work for the pecs today, and then I'm on to some more fun training in my opinion. That would be the progression work, which is really the meat and potatoes of this session. And as you can see, the volume work does exactly what it's designed to do. Force that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, that cell swelling, that fullness, and that pump. My current body composition, it's not in a bad place, but it's definitely a bit fluffier than coming off of prep. But in all honesty, that's really where you need to be if your goal is to get strong and to get bigger. Now for the meat and potato tricep exercise we're focusing on today, in the progression work, we're going to do a close grip bench press. This is a movement that I've always loved for pecs specifically, even more than triceps, as it's just a super comfortable pressing position for me. But even after all this time I've been training, I've always struggled to really get the triceps to do the most of the work, no matter how close the grip is. But what I found to work really well is that for placing it after chest pressing, where my pecs are already exhausted, that forces my triceps to take the brunt of the work. That's also why it works so well at this point in the session. For this lift, I'm aiming for just 2 sets in the 10 to 12 rep range here, naturally using a higher RPE, training to closer failure, or maybe even all the way to failure to achieve progression. Now for week 1, I'm not going to be going all out, but I'm also not going to be super conservative here. So I hit a good set of 10 reps on set 1, and I was able to keep that consistent on set 2. Second set of 10 actually felt a bit better than the first one, as some of that lactic acid had time to clear out from the pecs. And those 2 sets of 10 will be written in the logbook, and those will serve at the starting point for this lift, for this block. That's going to be something we'll aim to smash next time around. The next movement is a progression exercise for the delts. And since they're already hammered from all the pressing, we're just going to do one single set here of high incline dumbbell presses. I grabbed the hundreds here, and immediately I could feel how fatigued I was. And after just 4 reps on this exercise, I decided to cut the set there and leave it as my foundation and starting point for week 1. And I don't want to add any sloppy reps this early on. I'd rather just come back next time and smash that progression. And that's really all the harder pressing work for this push session. And now we have mostly isolation work to finish it off. For delts, we're going to be hitting 5 sets of lateral raises. And despite this being the progression day for my shoulders, lateral raises, which should be a staple in any shoulder training program in my opinion, are really not the greatest movement to focus on adding a ton of load over time. Unless you're pretty weak and there's a lot of room for improvement. But for me, I can already do fairly strict reps with over 55 pounds. So it's not something that I'm really going to get much out of aiming for weight jumps over time. So that means we're going with pure higher volume work on these by default. 5 sets, 12 to 15 reps here, just forcing as much blood into the muscle as possible. Say what you want about form and technique here, but if I'm going for the most tension on my delts and the most blood flow possible, doing these with a bit of momentum actually allows me to generate the greatest amount of tension on those side delts and even out the strength curve of the movement. Remember, muscle growth is not about textbook form. It's about creating as much tension on the muscle as possible. And you have to understand that textbook form with 10-pound dumbbells and lateral raises isn't necessarily something you can replicate with 40 or 50 plus pound dumbbells, simply due to the size of them, or due to the fact that you have 100 plus pounds pulling your torso forward throughout the movement. Some body English here actually can help even out the strength curve and actually place more tension on the delts than super strict reps would be, especially when the load gets above a certain point. But you won't hear this from the optimal crew or the guys hyper focused on biomechanics because they're too busy with their wrist cuffs and 5-pound weights to really understand how to train when you actually get super strong. But no hate here, just understand that a 20-pound lateral raise is not the same exercise as a 50+ pound lateral raise. Next up, we have some isolation work for the triceps. We've already loaded up some heavier weight on those close grip presses. So a supplemental lift here to get more blood into the muscle, more effective volume. So ideally, we want something that also creates a great stretch in the triceps to round out this session. We went with an overhead easy bar extension or a French press, but typically I might prefer something more like a cable here, something a bit more elbow friendly. But as I'm waiting for the rest of my home gym equipment to get here, I'm just using what I have access to. But nonetheless, this is still a very solid movement if your elbows allow for it. 3 sets here, higher rep ranges, really to target the pump and the metabolic stress, going from 15 to 20 reps. Nothing fancy, just good old-fashioned tricep pumps, which was fully accomplished here. And by the end of this exercise, at this point in the session, just about everything I trained was super pumped. Fatigue was pretty high, and the fullness was real. Now, I also programmed a bit of auto-regulation into these training sessions. Basically, for the body parts that are the progression work that day, I'll add in additional movement depending on how I feel. My delts were already cooked from all the pressing and the high volume lateral raises, so I really didn't feel like they needed much else. My triceps can really take a pounding. So I went with 1 key lift on the triceps to finish them off of just simple body weight dips. I focused on 2 AMRAP sets here, but the key here was not to turn them into pec dips, which is a movement that I'm personally super strong on. Typically, I can load up over 200 pounds on them, but these were to specifically target the triceps. So I was trying to stay as upright as possible and really squeeze with the triceps at the top of the movement rather than pushing with the pecs at the bottom. And at this point in the session, I was happy that I didn't need to use any additional load. Even with just my body weight, only 2 sets of 10 was all that I needed here. Again, something like this is only possible with appropriate exercise sequence. Otherwise, if I started with these first and I was fresh, I would have had to turn this into a 2, 3, or 4 plate lift, which is not what I want to be doing about 90 minutes into the session. Chest, shoulders, and triceps cooked. Lots of basic movements, progression on key lifts, volume on dedicated body parts, good old-fashioned hard training. If you're looking to build muscle using my old school bodybuilding training principles, make sure to check out all my training programs below. And if you want to follow along for more, make sure to hit subscribe.